Welcome back to Making Money Matter, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Kerry Stevenson. What a time for me to be talking to Charles Whitfield. He is the chairman of NH3 Clean Power. The ASX code is, funnily enough, NH3. Why do I say what a time to be talking to them? Well, you all know, because you're all feeling it at the Bowser, there is a little bit of a challenge with fuel supply. NH3 have got a project over in WA, and it's to do with ammonia. Now, we all know that diesel, the price of diesel going through the roof. We know what's going on in the Middle East. We know that there's some supply challenges. I'm going to get Charles to explain what they are doing with the potential source of a new clean energy. Don't start thinking about green hydrogen and all that sort of stuff that went bust, because we'll go into that. It's not that, okay? Got to understand that that's not where we're going. This is proven. And also what I like about Charles is, for those of you that remember, he took Galaxy Lithium, turned it around. He comes from a project finance background, so he understands how to take a project and make sure that shareholders, well, I can't say make sure, but pretty sure shareholders can get value going forward. Right now, market cap is 50 mil. Bit of CapEx expenditure, which we'll go into during this conversation, but I'll let Charles explain all of that as we go through, because this is an area that I actually was not very aware of. I've done a bit of homework, but let's take a deep dive and welcome Charles to the program. Charles, good to see you.
Thank you very much, Kerry. Great to see you.
Let's start off, first time on Making Money Matter. Explain to my beautiful audience, who is NH3 Clean Power? Who are you?
So NH3 is clean energy rather than clean power,
Oh,
but
clean
anyway,
energy. Yep,
that's
sorry.
okay. It's the same. So NH3 Clean Energy, we're developing a clean ammonia project in the Pilbara, near the port of Dampier in northern WA. And the focus of that project is to generate clean ammonia, and that means low emissions ammonia for the Asia Pacific region. And as you said, the application that we're very focused on is ammonia as a fuel. And there's a huge growing demand in Asia for that, both from a point of view of displacing hydrocarbons in power generation in countries like Japan and Korea, but also in maritime transport, where heavy fuel oil and diesel are being displaced by clean ammonia. And Australia and our project is in a prime position to be able to take advantage of that growth market.
What is clean ammonia? Sounds like a dumb question, but what is clean ammonia? What is it?
Well, ammonia is ammonia. So ammonia is NH3, like you rightly say, which is nitrogen and three hydrogens.
Yep.
So that's why people often compare it to, hydrogen, because it's using hydrogen as power, as does any fuel like methane, which is NH4. Hydrogen's always there.
Okay.
The secret about using ammonia is that there is no carbon there. So when you actually burn it, you don't get any CO2 emissions, and that's what makes it a low emissions fuel when you're utilizing it. It's a lot easier to transport than hydrogen, and therefore, when you want to have customers overseas or not next to the plant, ammonia makes an awful lot of sense. The thing that makes it blue ammonia is the fact that you're capturing all the CO2 emissions when you produce it. And that is the differentiating factor between a lot of historical ammonia plants that used to emit a large amount of CO2 into the atmosphere. We capture 99% of processed CO2. So we're comparable with green, which is or electrolysis based ammonia generation, but a fraction of the cost. And by that, I mean less than two-thirds of the cost and much bigger volumes.
Explain to us the current market, because you're not in production yet. You're in the Pilbara. We'll get into where that sits and where that lies, and capex and all those sorts of things. But
Sure.
are people using ammonia as energy source right now? Like, are you unique, or is this a common source of energy?
So the two most advanced plants are actually in the US. One of them, you may remember, Woodside actually purchased about 2 years ago from a company called OCI, and that was a multi-billion-dollar transaction where they purchased what was called the Beaumont blue ammonia plant. There's another one in the US called Blue Point, which is a joint venture between CF Industries, JERA, the Japanese company, and Mitsui.
Mhm.
So they are the first movers to feed into that market, but we are in a unique position, really in Asia Pacific, not just Australia, but in the Asia region.
Why? Why are you unique? No one else doing it? Is that what you mean?
That's a very good question, and that comes back to this whole blue versus green. As you might remember, there was a huge amount of government pressure and hype around green hydrogen and green ammonia. And that sort of set everybody off down the wrong track. So the vast majority of projects ended up going down that route, and they're just not economic. The technology is not developed enough. The amount of capex that you need for all the actual production infrastructure, but also the renewable power generation just doesn't exist, and so none of those have moved forward. And so that's really sort of cleared the table for us, and we saw that coming, 4 years ago. So we've always planned to have a much more pragmatic, much more commercial project, which gives our customers what they want, which is low emissions ammonia at volume at an affordable price. And that's what green could not do.
Okay, Charles, before we go too much into the depth, if you like, what attracted you? Because I mentioned at the start that you turned Galaxy Lithium around, and I think that
Yeah,
got sold to, was it Rio?
Rio, correct.
For a
Yes.
lot of money. So lots of happy
Yep.
shareholders there. And I quite often say to
Yep.
people, have a look at what management have done in the past. What's their track record? I need to understand, or we need to understand, why you're a good custodian of taking this company forward and ultimately that shareholder value, if you like. Because right now you're a 50 mil market cap with a potential capex needed of over $1 billion. That's big.
It is, although when you talk to most of our financiers, that's actually a small check size, and they would rather it was much bigger
Oh,
because obviously they're doing the same amount of work in terms of due diligence, and they want to deploy their capital. So I mean, Galaxy was a great win. That's one of many projects that I've worked on, especially in the technical and energy transition space. Obviously, the thing about Galaxy was it was a turnaround, and so the clock was really ticking to sort things out. And so the discipline that you need to have around execution, whether that's operational or strategic, is absolutely key. I come from a banking background. I was a managing director at Citibank and prior to that, Deutsche Bank, running a structured financing division for Asia Pac. So I ran that division. So that's given me access to the right people to talk to do the financing of large projects, and that's what I do. But like I say, I think that there has to be an absolute laser beam focus on execution, a very clear idea of who your customers are, what the market is, making sure that you're meeting that. So the way that we have structured this project is to make sure that, as I say, we're absolutely meeting customer needs in terms of the project, but also that our execution pathway is as de-risked as possible. And
okay.
so the technology that we're using, the location, and the partnerships of the project are a key part of the way that we're de-risking that project.
I love to go into a little bit more on the de-risking of the project, if you wouldn't mind, because I know you've just announced, I think a couple of days ago, about a partnership with Linde. You've got a partnership with Woodside. You've got a partnership with Chevron. There's a lot of partnerships. Is that a deliberate way for you to say, we're going to use people that are experts in certain areas because they're the experts in that particular area? We're going to take on this particular aspect that we understand. Can you just talk us through that?
That's exactly right, Kerry. So if I'll come to the partnerships in a second, but let me
Yeah.
just run through the way that we've thought about this project. So number one, choice of technology. So using an established technology which we know is commercially viable. So we're
Okay.
not trying to reinvent anything or whatever. So that's number one. Secondly, if you are producing blue hydrogen, blue ammonia, you need a number of things. You need plentiful and cheap gas. You need
Okay.
a CO2 sequestration solution. You need to have a deep water port for export. And then any existing infrastructure that you can have, which is relevant to your business, that you don't have to build, that's already built and paid for,
Yeah.
is a huge advantage. And so our location in the Maitland Strategic Industrial Area, it's a federally designated hydrogen hub. It's also designated by the Western Australian government as a decarbonised liquids hub. So we have all the support that we need. We are right next to the Burrup to Bunbury gas pipeline. So we don't need to build a gas pipeline. That runs through an infrastructure corridor where there is a state and federal initiative to build an ammonia pipeline. So we don't need to do that. The Port of Dampier already handles ammonia. It has a bulk liquids wharf that's used by Yara. So that's already built. So again, we've got all the bits of the puzzle that we need in terms of infrastructure. Then we move on to those partnerships, which you mentioned. And as you exactly say, our view is we do what we do best and we bring in world-class partners to do their parts. So gas supply coming from Chevron, CO2 sequestration being carried out by Woodside, pipelines being constructed by AGIG, a joint development agreement with the Pilbara Ports Authority for developing the clean ammonia bunkering industry. Technology from Topsoe, who are the leading provider of ammonia technology. And as you rightly say, we've just announced an agreement with Linde for the engineering and development and delivery of the project. They are the world leaders, undoubtedly. I mentioned the Beaumont plant and the Blue Point plant, and also there's a urea plant in the Pilbara called the Perdaman plant. They're involved in all of them. They are the guys who have done this 100 times before and know what they're doing. So to minimize execution risk, they're the people you need.
Who's Perdaman? Just talk.
So Perdaman, it's a project which is under construction at the moment. It's a private company. They are producing urea, which is a derivative of ammonia. So there's probably an 85% overlap between what their plant does and what our plant does. But the bits of the project at the front end are the bits that Linde are involved in.
Right now, I'm talking to you in April 2026. We need to understand I guess, why we should be interested as investors. Now,
Yeah.
as I say, talking to you in April 2026, you'll need to build the plant. You'll need to get the customers. I need to understand, if you like, what does that look like? How long is that going to take? Where are you going to get the financing for this? Because I'm sure it's not going to be a couple of hundred mil.
No, well, it is a super exciting time to be talking about this for both internal reasons and external reasons. Obviously, from a macro point of view, our customers, who are mainly across Asia, have always realized that energy security and ammonia security is really important. And about 85% of their production comes from the Middle East at the moment. The
How much?
way that they
85?
explain it,
Sorry, did you say 85%?
correct.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the way that they've always viewed it is, we're sitting on the side of a volcano. We need to be prepared. The fact that the volcano is actually erupting at the moment just makes it even more, front of mind. But they've always been of the view that 25% of their supply needs to come from Australia. We're obviously the country that gives Japan about a third of their LNG, a third of their coal, and a third of their uranium. Their thinking is about a third of their ammonia needs to come from Australia. And that has always been their view, but now with what's going on in the Middle East, it reinforces that absolutely.
Mhm.
So that's the macro why it's an exciting time. From an internal point of view, our FID is due at the end of the year. So we are in the home straight
Okay.
getting to FID. It's then a 3-year build, so first production is the end of 2029. So that actually is not that far away, and it's very much in the supply calculus of our customers at the moment. You
And just
mentioned,
before you go on,
yeah,
sorry, for those of you that get acronyms, I always stop people on acronyms. FID, ladies and gentlemen, just means final investment decision. It's the go,
that's
no go moment. Hopefully it's a go, but that's what FID means. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're absolutely right. It's the go no go moment, but it's also the time when all the agreements that you have and all the parties that you have, you crystallize everything. So everything is contingent up to that point, and then everything gets crystallized at that point. So
Signed.
so a very busy period between now and the end of the year. You mentioned financing. I mean, it's what I do, but we've been engaged with financiers for nearly 2 years. There are a couple of ones in the public domain that I can talk about, and they're policy-led financiers. So people like NAIF, the Northern
Mhm.
Australian Infrastructure Facility, who incidentally also were one of the financiers of this Perdaman project that we've talked about.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Also, JBIC, which is the Japanese Bank for International Cooperation. Obviously, we are going to be an energy supplier to Japan. We have in place already MOUs with Itochu Corporation and Mitsui OSK for offtake, 300,000 tons each of those. Our total production is 650,000 tons. So each one of those speaks for about half of our production under those MOUs. JBIC again is a policy-led financier, so you get relatively beneficial financing rates. And then we are working with a consortium of commercial lenders who have financed these kinds of projects before, are very familiar with them, and we'll be releasing details of those as and when they are in the public domain.
Okay, I thank you for that. In the interest of time, I just want to understand or have our audience understand the structure of the company, if you like. About 700 million shares on issue. Market cap is around about, I think, 50, 60 mil from my recollection. How are you going to drive shareholder value? Is it this? What do you think is the disconnect, I guess, is what I'm saying? Because it sounds to me like the market is there, the demand is there and growing and actually getting more important given what's going on in the world and especially in the Middle East. It a 50, 60 mil market cap seems to be a bit of a disconnect. Can you try and explain to us? Is it because hey, maybe it's because you just haven't been speaking to me, Charles. I don't know.
That must be it. That must be it. I mean, to be honest with you, I've been through all this before, and Galaxy was the same. I used to say, nobody gives a damn until everybody wants to be your best mate, and that
Yeah.
was exactly the way it was with Galaxy. I mean, we had done a massive amount of de-risking before there was any recognition in the public market. What you tend to find is that your commercial customers understand it, then your financiers understand it, and then finally the public market gets it. So I think that we obviously have an awful lot which is under confidentiality agreement. It's hard to get over to shareholders,
Sure.
what the state of play is on that. I think we've also been somewhat tainted, even though we have from day one differentiated ourselves by the green hydrogen failures. Because, I think there were over 90 green hydrogen projects in Australia, and I don't think any of them are going ahead. And I
No.
think people say, oh, clean energy, that was last year or that was 4 years ago. And what they don't realize is that there is absolutely a need there. The trouble is that everybody was unrealistic about what the real solutions were. So I think that's part of it. At the moment, there is a bit of a catch-22 for small caps, where
Mhm.
the price is set by the marginal buyer or seller, and those are retail investors, and a lot of them are going through a heap of pain right now. And so, if there is most of our investors are up, 400%, they've got gains. So, they can take money off the table and still feel good about it.
Right.
We just obviously need to spread the gospel to a wider audience who will benefit from the next 400%.
One thing I haven't touched on, I do want to before we finish, is the size of the market, because one of the things you said at the start was that your market is the Asia Pac region. Is that, how big is that market, and how do you supply it? How do you scale?
So, I mean, it's a big and growing market. So, like I mentioned, our phase one of the project produces 650,000 tons of ammonia.
Okay.
We can easily see by mid 2030s that's going to be a 6 million ton demand in the Asia Pacific region. So we have already got pre-planning for phase two and phase three and four as required. But the way that we're building it, because we're very, risk averse, is we will build phase one, everything's sold, it's executed, so on. Then we'll build phase two, so on and so forth. And so, what you saw in the lithium market after Galaxy was a lot of other people came in and flooded the market and drove prices down. We're very conscious that we want to make sure that everything we produce is very easily absorbed into the market.
All right. What's your biggest challenge then right now, apart from, I guess, the market fully understanding that this is not green hydrogen? It's different, and it's a different type of a process, if you like. What's your
I,
biggest challenge?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is actually, I mean, whether it's the, green versus blue thing or just general awareness and understanding of what a large market this is, which has been somewhat below the radar. On the execution side, we've got an amazing team staffed by executives who had senior positions at, Woodside and Chevron and Wood Engineering and so on. They, everybody's delivered projects before. We have very comfortable conversations on the financing side, obviously having Lindy on board in terms of the engineering and project delivery. Fantastic. So really, from my point of view, making sure that shareholders are getting recognition for the value that's already been built in the company and continuing to deliver milestones for additional accretive value.
Charles, I'm not sure if I asked you this. Charles Whitfield, what attracted you? I mean, because I'm sure, former managing director of Citi and Deutsche and turning Galaxy around. When did you join, and why this particular project? Have you got a big background in ammonia, or what was it?
No, it was actually an institutional fund manager who had done very well out of Galaxy, who wanted me to take a look at this company. So that's how I got involved, and that's how I get involved in most of the projects that I do. Obviously, I have been in the energy transition and technical materials industry for 20 years now, which makes me feel a lot older than I want to. But during that time, you obviously make a lot of contacts and you do a lot of sifting. And it's really spotting an opportunity, putting an excellent team together, because that's the difference between a good company and a bad company. It's all
100%.
about the management team. And then having a very, very clear, defined strategy for execution.
What would you like to leave our beautiful audience with? This is our first conversation. I'm sure we're going to have many more. But what's the key thing that you would like to leave our investor audience with today?
We realize that it is a market that lots of people are unaware of, but we try really hard at NH3 to make sure that our website has heaps of information about not only the project, but also the industry. We're also very, very open to investor interaction. Most of my shareholders would attest that I pick up the phone 24/7. So I want to encourage investors to have a look at the opportunity, have a look at the company, have a look at the management team, and any remaining questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Charles, been a real pleasure. I've learnt so much on today's conversation. I really appreciate it. It's a big market. And ladies and gentlemen, you all know that the talk of the town at the moment is fuel supply, fuel security, etc. Has Charles got his hands on something? Has he got the tiger by the tail? Time will tell. Sounds like it's going to be a very interesting time. And as he said before, final investment decision is coming up at the end of the year. Time is going to go very quickly. So watch this space. And as Charles said, you can reach out and ask him any questions that we may not have covered on today's conversation. Charles, thanks so much for chatting to me today on Making Money
Kerry,
Matter.
thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.